The Morris Minor 1000. 7 charming secrets behind Britain's beloved classic. The Morris Minor 1000 stands tall as one of the most iconic vehicles in British automotive history. A machine not distinguished by luxury or speed, but by personality. Its appeal resided in its pragmatism, timeless attractiveness, and unexpected reliability. It wasn't about roaring engines or elegant performance curves. It was about simplicity that worked. While the world was falling in love with futuristic designs and chrome luxury, Britain adopted a humble little automobile that just got the job done. And along the road, the Morris Minor gained a passionate fan base. Grandparents passed them down. Teenagers learned to drive in them. Mechanics respected their accessibility. It's the kind of car that became part of the family. But even if you believe you know the Morris Minor 1000, there's a high chance you haven't heard these 7 unusual, fascinating, and occasionally hilarious facts. Number 1. The heater that barely heated. Yes, the Morris Minor 1000 technically came with a heater. But effectiveness? That's where expectations have to be managed. For most owners, the heater felt like a courteous suggestion rather than a trustworthy feature. It was just a device that routed warm air from the engine compartment via some primitive ducting and into the cabin. The issue was simple. It took long to warm up. On cold mornings, you could be 10 kilometers into your journey and still waiting for the first whisper of lukewarm air. And once it eventually did arrive, it was less of a blast and more like a tired sigh of heat that barely reached your fingertips. No temperature knobs. No changeable fan speeds. Foggy windows generally stayed foggy, and if you were expecting toasty fingertips, you were out of luck. Yet, despite all that, owners found it curiously charming. It was part of the car's personality. Many would lay themselves in thick coats and woolen blankets, patiently waiting as the car groaned to life and supplied whatever warmth it could generate. The Morris Minor's heater wasn't a feature, it was a ritual. Number 2. Windscreen washing. BYO squeeze. Cleaning the windscreen on a Morris Minor 1000 was no automatic luxury. It was a laborious operation requiring both timing and coordination. Instead of a modern-day button that sends washer fluid blasting onto your windshield, you had a rubber bulb. A little, squeezable pump affixed to the dashboard. If your screen got muddy, you had to physically push that bulb to discharge water via a tiny hose and onto the glass. But that was only step 1. The instant you squeezed, you'd soon need to turn on the wipers with your other hand, creating an unpleasant two-handed ballet behind the wheel. Timing was everything. Too soon, and the wipers brushed a dry surface. Too late, and the water had already dribbled down. In colder months, the fluid would often freeze before it ever made it to the screen. And in summer, the tube could dry out, break, or clog. Still, the system had a bizarre kind of grace. It was simple, direct. A reminder that driving used to be more involved, more personal. Every noisy wipe and mistimed squeeze was part of the experience. Number 3. Wider than approved, and that was the plan. When creating the Morris Minor, famed engineer Alec Isagones understood exactly what he wanted. But upper management didn't always agree. The initial design spec asked for a narrower body. Management wanted something modest and efficient, but Isagones feared that decreasing the width would harm the car's stability, handling, and overall driving pleasure. So he got inventive. He didn't argue. He didn't push back. Instead, he just built the prototype wider than approved. A few more inches on either side, subtle but crucial. When it came time to show it, he skillfully positioned the model so that executives couldn't get an accurate measurement, nestled tightly against a wall, obscuring its true size. The higher-ups signed off without noticing. By the time they noticed, production was far underway. The result? A more stable, comfortable ride and somewhat more interior space for passengers. This modest act of rebellion wonderfully illustrates Isagones' genius, knowing when to transgress the rules and how to do it with style. Number 4. Cranking the engine by hand. In a world of electronic starters and keyless ignitions, it's almost impossible to think that not very long ago, certain cars could be started by hand. And the Morris Minor 1000 kept on to that legacy longer than most. Tucked inside the front bumper was a hole for the crank handle. If your battery was low or the weather was too cold for an electric start, you could insert the metal crank, give it a vigorous twist, and physically bring the engine to life. It wasn't easy. You required proper technique, some strength, and a steady wrist because a kickback from the crank could injure your arm. But once you learned it, you were free from battery worries forever. Many British owners in the 1950s and 60s depended on this strategy regularly during icy mornings when nothing else worked. There was something immensely pleasant about it, a tangible link between you and the computer. You didn't merely start the car. You woke it up. Number 5. The optimistic speedometer. Driving a Morris Minor 1000 required a healthy dose of common sense, especially if you trusted the speedometer. Like many automobiles of its day, the Minor had a speed gauge that often read higher than your actual speed. You might peek down and see a confident 60 miles per hour, only to be overtaken by milk trucks, bicyclists, or young children on scooters. Why the incorrect reading? Well, some say it was purposeful. In those days, speed rules were flexible, and manufacturers sometimes chose to show quicker numbers, on the premise that drivers who thought they were speeding might slow down. The mechanism itself was a rudimentary cable-driven setup, prone to stretching, slipping, and wobbling over time. Calibration was more of an optimistic estimate than a precision tweak. But in traditional Morris Minor style, even the speedometer had character. It wasn't about pinpoint accuracy. It was about the journey and not worrying too much about how quickly you were traveling. Number 6. The Minor that worked for a living. Most people remember the Morris Minor 1000 as a family car, compact, inexpensive, and dependable. But not everyone knows about its commercial side. The Minor was also made as a van and a pickup truck, both of which became workhorses across the UK. These utility models shared the same front end as the saloon but featured a stronger chassis and a fully re-engineered rear portion. The truck had an open cargo bed, while the van boasted an enclosed compartment with dual rear doors, ideal for delivery drivers and small enterprises. They were tough, easy to fix, and cost-effective. Local milkmen, postmen, and shopkeepers all relied on them daily. And because of their distinctive appearance, firms often painted their logos right onto the sides, turning these humble little cars into rolling ads. Today, these commercial copies are rare and highly collectible. They're in homage to a time when even delivery vehicles had style and curves. Number 7. The Traveler. Wood, beauty, and maintenance. One of the most instantly recognizable Morris Minor types was the Traveler, the estate version with a rear frame constructed of exposed wood. And no, the wood wasn't simply cosmetic. It was structural. Real ash timber formed the rear structure and supported the car's body panels and doors. It gave the car a distinctive, vintage aesthetic, like a rolling piece of cabinetry. It mimicked the American woody wagons of the 1940s, but with unmistakable British flair. However, this exquisite design has a terrible side. The timber requires continual maintenance. If you overlooked it, moisture would slip in, rot would set, and structural integrity might be affected. In the moist British environment, this wasn't a rare issue. Still, owners adored their Travelers. They were special, practical, and they turned heads wherever they went. The upkeep was worth the reward. Number 8. A designer's regret. Perhaps the weirdest twist in the narrative of the Morris Minor is the opinion of its developer. Alec Isagones, the great mind behind the automobile, didn't truly enjoy it. He appreciated its engineering, the handling, the small packaging, the balance, but believed the end result was too safe, too commonplace. His genuine vision came to life in the revolutionary Mini, which broke the mold totally. That was the car he felt most proud of. And yet, the Morris Minor was a massive hit. It became the first British car to sell over 1 million units. It wasn't radical. It wasn't flashy. But it was reliable, inexpensive, and much loved. Sometimes, the best success stories are the ones that surprise even their creator.